Look, I need to be upfront with you right now. Finding a rental abroad nearly destroyed my first year of living overseas. Not because the country was difficult, not because the language barrier was impossible, but because I walked into the rental market completely blind, and someone took full advantage of that. Today, I am going to make sure that never happens to you. This is the second Homeland Our series on building a life abroad. And if you have been following along, you know we do not sugarcoat anything here. We talk about the real stuff. The stuff travel bloggers skip because it is messy and complicated and sometimes embarrassing to admit. Renting in a foreign country falls squarely into that category, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to protect yourself, negotiate confidently, and find a place you can genuinely call home. Let us start with the uncomfortable truth that every expat eventually learns the hard way. The rental market in almost every popular expat destination operates on a completely different logic than what you grew up with. The rules are different, the customs are different, and the scammers know that foreigners are overwhelmed, in a hurry, and often carrying more money than locals. That combination makes you a target. The most common rental scam targeting expats worldwide follows a predictable pattern. You find a listing online that looks incredible for the price. You message the landlord. They are warm, responsive, and incredibly accommodating. They mention they are currently abroad, or dealing with a family emergency, or some other reason they cannot meet in person. They ask you to wire a deposit to hold the property, and then they vanish, along with your money. Here is the rule that will save you every single time. Never wire money to anyone you have not met face to face, inside the actual property you are trying to rent. Never. Not for a deposit, not for a holding fee, not for anything. If a landlord cannot or will not meet you inside the apartment, you walk away and do not look back. But scams are just the beginning. Even legitimate rentals abroad can become financially painful if you do not understand how local lease law works. Every country has its own framework governing tenant rights, and what is standard in one place can be completely illegal somewhere else. In some countries, landlords are legally required to return your deposit within a specific number of days after you move out. In others, there are no laws protecting that deposit at all. In some markets, tenants have extraordinary protections that make it nearly impossible for a landlord to evict them. In others, the landlord can essentially remove you with very little notice. Before you sign anything, you need to spend about 2 hours researching the tenant protection laws in whatever country you are moving to. I know 2 hours sounds like a lot when you are excited and exhausted from your move, but that 2 hours of research is worth more than any lease you will ever sign. Search specifically for security deposit regulations, notice period requirements for both parties, rent increase limitations, and what happens if the landlord decides to sell the property while you are living in it. These 4 areas are where most expat rental disasters unfold. Now let us talk about something nobody explains clearly, and that is how to actually negotiate an apartment when you do not speak the local language fluently. The good news is that negotiating across a language barrier is entirely possible, and in some ways, it is actually easier than you might expect. First, do your homework on local rental prices before you ever view a single apartment. Spend at least a week just browsing listings in the neighborhood you want. Get a feel for what a realistic price looks like for the size and quality of apartment you need. When you arrive at a viewing and the landlord quotes you a price, you want to already know whether that number is fair, inflated, or genuinely good. Second, leverage the power of silence and patience. In many cultures, the first price offered is never the final price. It is an opening position in a conversation. If you express serious interest but hesitate on price, many landlords will move. The key is not to seem desperate. Even if you have been searching for weeks and this apartment feels like the one, Do not let that energy show in the negotiation. Take your time. Ask questions. Leave and come back. Third, and this is something most guides completely ignore, find a local ally before you start your search. This could be a coworker, a neighbor, a language exchange partner, someone from an expat Facebook group who has been in the country for a year or more. Ask them to accompany you to viewings, or at minimum to review any lease before you sign it. A local ally does not just help with translation. They help you read the room. They notice things about a landlord or a property that a newcomer simply cannot catch. When you are reviewing the lease itself, there are specific things you must look for regardless of what language it is written in. Get the lease translated if necessary. This is not optional. You need to understand the duration of the agreement, the exact amount of the security deposit, and the conditions under which it can be withheld, who is responsible for repairs and maintenance, whether subletting is permitted, what utilities are included, and whether there is a clause allowing the landlord to increase rent during the lease period. If any of these areas are vague or missing from the document, ask for clarification in writing before you sign. Speaking of writing, get everything in writing. Every promise, every verbal agreement, every concession the landlord makes during negotiation. If the landlord says they will fix the broken air conditioning before you move in, that needs to be documented. If they promise to repaint the bedroom, that goes in writing. Verbal agreements are almost impossible to enforce across cultural and legal systems you are still learning to navigate. Now let us talk about the physical inspection of the apartment itself, because this step is where so many expats silently lose their security deposits months later. Before you hand over a single dollar, euro, or local currency unit, walk through the entire apartment with your phone, filming everything. Every wall, every floor, every appliance, every window, every door. Open every cabinet, run every faucet, test every light switch, document anything that is damaged, stained, worn, or broken. Send that video to the landlord by text or email immediately after the viewing, so there is a time-stamped record of the apartment's condition before you moved in. This video documentation practice has saved expats, I know thousands, in wrongly withheld deposits. Landlords who might otherwise blame a new tenant for existing damage simply cannot argue against time-stamped video evidence sent directly to them before move-in. Let me leave you with a framework that ties all of this together. Think of finding a rental abroad in 3 distinct phases. The search phase, where your job is to educate yourself on the local market and identify red flags early. The negotiation phase, where patience, preparation, and local allies give you real leverage. And the protection phase, where documentation, written agreements, and an understanding of local law create a safety net that keeps you from losing money or stability later. Most expats rush through the first phase, skip the second entirely, and do not think about the third until they are already in trouble. If you approach this differently, if you slow down, do the research, and treat finding your apartment like the significant legal and financial commitment that it genuinely is, you will land in a home you love at a price that makes sense with a landlord relationship built on clarity instead of assumption. There are more videos in this series covering everything from banking abroad to building a social life from scratch in a new country. If you have not subscribed yet, now is the time, because we are just getting to the good stuff. Drop your destination in the comments below. Tell me where you are planning to move or where you are already living, and let the community around this channel become one of those local allies we talked about today.